This is GWEN Talks Radio, where intimate conversations reveal, heal, inspire, and entertain. And now, here's your host, Tess Cacciatore.
Okay, here we go. You are listening to GWEN Talks Radio, and I'm your host, Tess Cacciatore. This episode I am so excited about because it represents so many things. It's the rise of the feminine, and it's about peace. This time of year, we're heading into the holidays where peace on earth and goodwill towards man is a cliche in a way. We see it that's translated and mistranslated from Greek to the Bible, and even as cliche on greeting cards. But how can we obtain peace every day? So today's November 8th, and when I was launching this episode, and I can't wait to share with you who's on the show today, November 8th, the date kept sticking with me. I kept thinking, why does that sound so familiar and interesting? So I went and looked in history. 2002, we had the Iraq disarmament crisis. The United Nations Security Council unanimously approved a resolution on Iraq, forcing Saddam Hussein to disarm or face serious consequences. That was 2002. 2 years later, in 2004, we had a war in Iraq. More than 10,000 U.S. troops and a small number of Iraqi army units participated in a siege on an insurgent stronghold in Fallujah. Then we fast forward into 2016, 1 year ago today. That's why it was so ominous to me. I was like, why is November 8th haunting me? It was Donald Trump is elected as the 45th president of the United States, defeating Hillary Clinton. So here we are 1 year later, 10 months into the election results, and all around the world we are poised in the conversation of nuclear war versus peace. And the irony of what the power is of how we can sit down and talk face to face, which we're going to do in this episode today with amazing, powerful women, and the irony of talk versus tweet, and how we've seen that this one president has been able to stir the pot internationally with regard to nuclear war. Getting people to talk about it, I guess, is a great thing, but the dangers that have come along with the tweets. November 8th is also part of the 12-day tour that Trump is on, his tour of Asia. Today, Mr. Trump will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. And one of the tweets he had this week is that he hoped it will be a historic trip. Well, I am hoping as well that it's a historic trip, but a trip towards peace. Let's see if we can shift this energy. And how we're going to shift this energy, I believe, is having the feminine rising. Getting the feminine aligned back with the masculine, not one to overpower, not one to make one better than the other, but really taking back the feminine energy and working for that total yin-yang, beautiful symbol that everything's in balance and harmony and working towards peace. So we are going to have an explosive, in all good ways, episode today, all about the feminine rising, all about peace. So every week, as you know, I change out my co-host because I want to hear the intimate conversations and dialogue that we can have so we can reveal and heal. And after the break, I'm going to bring on who's one of my dear friends that we met very briefly not too long ago, but I'll share with you the synergistic story of how I met with Alexandra Feldner, who's the founder of FemQ. And we'll dive into that conversation. And we have a wonderful, two powerful speakers that will be coming out with Dr. Scilla, Elworthy. Wait till you hear about her, and Lynn Evola. It's a great show. So buckle in. We're going to have an amazing talk about peace and how we can create that on our planet today. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Longoria with my new song, Playground, featuring Dallas Lovato with me. Time to dance. Playground is available now on all digital music stores and streaming. David Longoria featuring Dallas Lovato. Playground.
The Life Changes Show is a premier radio show presented by the Life Changes Network, which is a company whose team has dedicated their lives not only to positive change, but to helping others observe and embrace, honor, and even celebrate their own changes, thus enabling a more positive, inspired life and helping to create a more positive and inspired world. From everyday people, celebrities, corporate giants, and children, we are here to help and to serve. With heart, integrity, and experience, we bring our message and positive intent into your lives through the Life Changes Show, lifechangesnetwork.com, and through guest appearances on other inspiring shows and events. If you wish to learn more about Life Changes Life Coaching, a private consultation with one of us, corporate or live event appearances, or if you would like us to appear on your radio or TV shows, please email us at info@lifechangesnetwork.com.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to GWEN Talks Radio. I'm your host, Tess Cacciatore. I want to take this time to thank our advertisers and sponsors. We try to get the like-minded sponsors that are in line, that are a part of peace initiatives, a part of the dialogue, creating a place to reveal and heal. So I am so excited. It's interesting how social media has played into our lives of how we get connected to people. I'm going to do a quick shout out to Morgan Hart. He's one of our first listeners and our first likes of GWEN Talks Radio. And one day I was just stumbling through Facebook and I saw his post saying, this is a must-see film. And I had a few minutes to spare and I clicked on and I went down the rabbit hole of just mesmerized by the images, the beauty, the power. And this film captured my heart, and I went digging further into the rabbit hole, and I searched and searched, and I said, I need to find this woman. And I did, and she's right here in my house, all the way from Europe. I'm so excited because we've had a chance to be able to meet a few times this week. We're going to talk about this fabulous summit that's coming up in Los Angeles. We're going to back into it of where she started. The co-host for today, Alexandra Feldner, is an international model agent with Elite, and in the past she's done amazing work. She started her own agency. The experience gave her the variety to work with cultures across Europe and USA, and she was working with supermodels in Paris. We're going to dive into what she identified as culture clashes and how the synergy of what she went through, she became an amazing filmmaker. So I really I've been shouting from the mountaintops about this film, Today I Rise. I have it on GWEN.live. You can see it there. You can find it on YouTube. It's been viewed millions of times. And so I'm so excited. Welcome to co-hosting with me, Alexandra.
Thank you, Tess, for this beautiful introduction. I feel very honored to be here, and I love Los Angeles, and we had such a beautiful time here.
This is her last day. She's going back to Europe tomorrow.
Yeah.
So tell me about, there's so much we can talk about, but let's just back into it. I want to know about FemQ and the wonderful women that you've collaborated with that brought together this beautiful summit that you did in Berlin a couple of years ago.
So the story behind it is, as you said, I have always worked a little bit between the countries, especially the European countries and California in the film business. I was a model agent, as you very correctly said, and then I became an agent for film directors. And so I thought the dialogue between California and Europe was always very interesting, because what can we learn from each other, how things are dealt with here and back in Europe. So that is a little bit history. And then I lived in Paris for almost 20 years and moved to Berlin 3 years ago. And what occurred to me immediately was how not so very feminine that city is. Berlin is a very exciting city. And coming from Paris, where the feminine rules, most certainly through fashion and the perfumes and the women and the culture, the sensuality, and I was missing that in Berlin. So as I moved to Berlin to go from a purely corporate background into bringing something into the world which is more meaningful, I then decided that the first step would be bringing something feminine to Berlin. And sure enough, when you send out something into the universe, most of the time it comes back quite immediately. And so I met Scilla, And I was...
Who's going to be the guest today?
Who's going to be the guest today.
Yes.
And her organization, Rising Women, Rising World. And when I dived deeper into the topic, I was so incredibly impressed what these women are doing all over the world. And I thought, okay, it would be great to use my expertise and my creativity to help them, scale their message and make them more well-known. And so I decided to organize an event in Berlin, which I then called Femme Q, which comes from the word femme in French, meaning a woman, and Q like IQ and EQ from intelligence.
I'm so glad you explained the Q part, because I was going to ask you, where did the Q come from? So keep going. That's really wonderful.
So, these women, of course, are shining, especially through their extreme intelligence. And so I always knew that this is what the world is missing nowadays, is the feminine, is the energy of the mother, is the feminine wisdom we have. So we put our forces together and organized this 2-day event in Berlin last year in June, which was amazing. So 150 women came from 17 countries, and we talked for 2 days about the feminine. So day 1 was the feminine on a very individual level. How do we reconnect with our feminine side? And on the second day, we were talking about how to bring the feminine into the world. And as you said, to balance it with the masculine.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because a lot of the workshops that I've done is really to start about within, because if we can't get our within settled and at peace and through forgiveness and letting go of our regrets and really celebrating the feminine within ourselves, and really knowing that within ourselves there's the balance of the masculine and feminine. Because so many women in business, we've talked about this, for decades now, is how do we balance that in business? So what did you think the outcome was? I saw the outcome, but I want you to tell our listeners about the outcome of FemQ.
Well, the outcome was, I love the fact that most women left the conference and said that it gave them hope. I think it was an interesting conversation, because what disturbs a little bit the process, that's what I found out in all the conversations I had now all over Europe, is that people think it has to be like that and we cannot change it. But of course we can change it. And so to see the feminine be reintegrated in politics and peace building, in education, in all these areas, is something I feel very passionate about, and we all feel very passionate about. So the outcome was that people got an idea how the world would look like, if the feminine would be reintegrated, and went out there and, had tools and had learned a lot, how to implement that in their own lives,
What I loved about, I wish I would have been at that conference. I didn't know you yet.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about where it's going next. But what I loved is that there was a dialogue. It wasn't just a bunch of talking heads on a stage, that really you got to the crux of the matter. You highlighted 80 women, I believe, that have, you put together a coalition of these short videos that have all the intellectual empowerment from each of these speakers. So you have a program that you have on your website.
Yeah, we actually took the content of those 2 days, because it was so intense and deep and full of wisdom. So I wanted to make sure to make this available for more people, all the people who couldn't come to the summit. And so we have it now on our website, femq.org, as a webinar. And so you will find not 80 women, you will find 80 video clips of all the best moments of the summit and the deepest wisdom which we shared. And so it's, you get a lot out of it. People who downloaded it loved it. And I think it shows you a better world, a world which works for all.
Well, sharing the wisdom is really important in our tribes of women around the world and bringing cultures together. And you had so many countries come together. So you've been in Los Angeles for the last couple of weeks. And let's share with our listeners about the upcoming event that is happening in Los Angeles in June.
Yeah. So we had this conversation, as I said, a little bit around the world Brazil and in Europe, in Brussels and in Oxford and in Berlin. And we are doing a conference on the International Women's Day in London. And
which is March 8th.
Which is March 8th. And I felt personally very passionate about bringing it to California, because I think there's an important dialogue to have between the women of California and the men of California, by the way, and us from Europe. A lot of things we can exchange in terms of what worked, what didn't work, experiences. So the summit will take place in the week of the 25th of June in Los Angeles, and it will be 2 days, and it will be very interactive, talks and workshops and, working together in smaller and bigger groups. We are currently looking for corporate partners or partners who would like to join, and also, be creative with us. Imagine what we can talk about. I mean, in which direction we focus the content. So it's all very exciting. I'm looking at locations tomorrow, and I love the excitement of people here. When we talked about what we can do together. And so I'm really looking forward to be here.
And I'm excited it's in my own backyard.
Exactly.
Because I'm part of the mix as well. I'm offering my services, my heart, my passion to this, because what's really wonderful about doing this show in November is we have plenty of time to really prepare. Yeah. So if you're out there listening and you want to be a sponsor, you want to buy a ticket, we're going to have all that information on our website, which is GWEN.live, and you'll be able to participate, buy a ticket, and either do the live stream if you're around the world and can't make it to LA, or come and be with the tribe in person in LA in June 2018.
2018, exactly.
The hours back, the fall back and all that kind of stuff that's going on. It's got my mind a little jumbled on the dates and years these days. So we are going to...
And by the way, I would like to say one last thing. If you want to have an idea of how the summit is and what it's all about, we have a 12-minute documentary.
Yes.
On GWEN and on FemQ.org on the landing page, and you can have you can see for yourself.
Yes, that 12-minute piece is so empowering. It gives me chills just reminding me about that video. Yeah. So thanks for reminding us. We'll have plenty of other opportunity in this hour to guide you to the websites where you need to go. When we come back from the break, Dr. Scilla Elworthy will be talking about her book called The Business Plan for Peace. I am so thrilled. She was brought here by my co-host, Alexandra. So that's what's the beauty of GWEN Talks Radio is we bring on a guest host, and through that connection, we open the doors to more and more amazing women. So right after the break, we're going to talk to Dr. Scilla, and I'll be right back.
Hi, this is Fran Drescher, and I'm on GWEN Talk Radio, and I hope you go to cancerschmanza.org and learn how you can reduce your risk of cancer and a lot of other illnesses for you and your family. Go now and save your lives.
The Little Dog That Could is the fantastically true story of a man and a little dog that came into his life as his mentor to help him understand the world beyond his human senses and to experience life, love, and healing beyond his human understanding. Best-selling author Filippo Voltaggio, who currently hosts the highly regarded Life Changes show, is an internationally known singer, speaker, and life coach. Filippo offers up his own story, how one little surprise package in fur and 4 legs transformed his life unexpectedly forever and furthered his path of self-discovery. In The Little Dog That Could, Filippo brings to life the meaning of the adage, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Through the reading of this book, you will experience the journey of real miracles that transcend time, space, and logic while gaining practical tools that will help you navigate your way. The Little Dog That Could is available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. For more information, visit thelittledogthatcould.com. That's thelittledogthatcould.com.
Welcome back to GWEN Talks Radio. This is your host, Tess Cacciatore, with my beautiful, amazing, powerful co-host, Alexandra Feldner, who just shared with us FemQ. So you'll be able to see all the information on our website about how to sign up, be a sponsor, etc. Going into this introduction, I'm going to give more of the statistical credits to this woman's life because it is mind-blowing. And then I'm going to have Alexandra do a more personal introduction because they've been friends and partners and everything like that for years now. So I'm thrilled to be able to bring Dr. Scilla onto the show. She has been a Nobel Peace Prize nomination, 1988, 1989, 1991. Oh my gosh, just even that alone is amazing. But then also she's done the dialogue with NATO and the Warsaw Treaty Organization, working with Mikhail Gorbachev, Robert McNamara, and Lord Carrington. She has the Nawano Peace Prize in 2003, advisor to Peter Gabriel, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Sir Richard Branson in setting up the Elders. The launch of the Elders happened in Johannesburg on Nelson Mandela's 89th birthday. Appointed chief strategist of the World Peace Festival held in Berlin, August 2011. And not only that, also a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2013 presented by A Voice of the Women. And I'm definitely going to be giving you a Luminary Award when I get to see you because you are definitely GWEN Luminary. And so Alexandra, tell me, how did you meet Scilla, and let's bring her onto the show.
I met Scilla when I was doing one of her seminars called Inner Action. And I think that was the moment where I completely realized that this part of being an activist was missing in my life. And Scilla embodies this so beautifully because she is on one hand extremely feminine and on the other hand a very fierce peace activist. And since then we have been working together, and I am always very excited to put my expertise, into also helping her, bringing her cause out there, because it's an important topic. And also what changed my life was that I all of a sudden realized that we are somehow sleeping and thinking that this and that is just the way it is, and it's not, and we can all do something about it. So, and that's why we now also talk about her new book, The Business Plan for Peace, because it's all about what we can do for world peace.
I'm so excited. Dr. Scilla, please welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for these amazing introductions, which I should have a very hard job to live up to.
Oh my gosh! Well, I have my seatbelt on in this chair because I can't wait to go into this dialogue with you of the enormous amount of gifts that you bring to the world. Your book is fascinating. Just even the statistics alone, and your passion in your business plan. And Alexandra was telling me yesterday that your target audience is very similar to GWEN, because we want to hit the millennials and the young women and know that they have the power. We all of us women and all of us men have the power within to make a difference. So speaking of women, you have extraordinary women that you're organizing for a peace-building initiative in Poland and Germany and all of that. Would you please share with us about that initiative and where you're going with it?
Well, it really follows on from what I outline in the book, which is 25 different initiatives that we know will work, that are already proven to work in preventing people killing each other. And one of the things that emerges from all this experience over 35 years is that women are very often, in fact, I would say almost always, way ahead of the game when it is a question of building peace, largely because it is women who suffer from the fallout of war. We know, for example, that very few women are represented on peace negotiations. Only 3.5% of those sitting around the table at peace negotiations currently have been women, with the result that those peace agreements don't last very long because the key issues that face women are not included in the peace agreement. So one of the motivations for writing this book was to see to it that we can get many, many more women involved in the negotiation of peace agreements, but also in the work that they do so brilliantly of stopping people killing each other, often at the risk of their own lives. So
that's a horrific statistic that it's only 3%. And obviously the solution is to get more women at the table. How do we do that?
Well, there's a wonderful organization in Washington, D.C. called Inclusivity and Inclusive Security, I beg your pardon. And they developed the biographies of suitably qualified women, particularly in areas of what we would call hot conflict, because that's when they're most needed to represent the interests of their children, older people, and those who've been wounded or traumatized by war at the peace table. What I'm finding as well, and you mentioned it, is that in the eastern part of Europe, there are extraordinary women emerging, forming organizations in Poland, what used to be East Germany, and also in Slovakia, where they're, I'm just extraordinarily impressed by the quality of these women and the way that they're organizing. And you mentioned earlier, Tess, that GWEN addresses the inner aspect of our development in order to be useful in the world. And I totally agree with that and underwrite it. And all of our teaching, all of our training, and Alexandra mentioned inner action, which speaks for itself, is that we have to do the inner work in order to be most effective in the work that we do in the world. And the last 2 chapters of my book really address how we can acquire those skills and how useful they are in our own homes, in the workplace, in the community, even in our children's schools. So it's not only those at the front line of conflict who can build peace, it's really anybody at home, starting at home, really.
One of the statistics that I read in your book, I'm not going to quote it because you have them obviously in heart, but what was mind-boggling to me, and we know that it's the truth, but when you get it written in black and white and you have those numbers attached to it, it is earth-shattering to me. The amount of billions of dollars that are spent on war versus the amount of billions of dollars that is substantially less that could actually create a world of peace. Can you share a little bit about that statistic so we can dive in a little bit deeper with that conversation?
Well, the key statistics has so many noughts on the end of it that it almost...
I know we could be here for 3 days regardless of that.
But the amount spent on militarization worldwide today is $1,868 billion. That's $1,686 billion.
I don't even know how many zeros that is. That's crazy.
It is a crazy number. Whereas when we do the calculation based on experience of what it would take to prevent war using 25 reliable measures that we know work, and even extending it over a 10-year period, which you would need to do, would only cost, guess, $2 billion.
$2 billion?
$2 billion, that's all.
Oh my God, I have goosies all the way down my legs. It's insane that people don't get that and why we can't get that. I mean, obviously we know there's a lot of profit in war, and that's why men particularly are driving us to war and all the nuclear conversations that's been happening lately. But I'm so happy that you have your book out there, and we're going to shout this kind of stuff to the mountaintops, because this is ridiculous that there's that vast of a difference that could create a place of peace.
Yes. And when you think that we spend $9 billion annually on ice cream, and we could prevent war for $2 billion.
$9 billion a year on ice cream?
$9 billion a year on ice cream. And for $2 billion, we could prevent war in some of the hottest conflict parts.
Well, that brings to mind Ben and Jerry's, because they do a lot of social impact work. We need to call them up and say, hey, give us some money over here on this side, because we need to create a place of peace. And ice cream is a pretty good little treat to have in the land of sweets to eat for peace. That's amazing. I'm in shock right now.
Well, they say that when you want to get a lot of people to a meeting, one of the side meetings at the United Nations, you offer Ben & Jerry's ice cream and then everybody comes.
Oh, I like that. I think I'm going to do that in every meeting. I know we did we're going to be doing one in the spring at the UN. So we're going to have Ben & Jerry's there in honor of you. So I want to talk about, well, let me just have Alexandra jump in. Do you have any questions right now? That's just because you've been working with her, you've been building her website and all of the things that you've been doing. What would be something that you would want the listeners to know that hasn't been revealed yet?
I think what I find most interesting is how simple sometimes solutions are. So, Scilla, why don't you talk a little bit about the skills of listening and about your friend Gululai and how she prevents suicide bombing? Because I think we have that fear of terror with what just happened in New York. You know, this is so part of our everyday life now. So why not talk about this a little bit?
I will, Alexandra. And just let me say that Alexandra has been the most wonderful, not just an encourager, but she's brought so much beauty into my life and elegance into the website that she's designed for me.
She's an amazing creative genius. I'm bowing to her with you, Scilla, because when I saw that film, you know, she's artistically expressed and beautiful, because I'm a filmmaker too. And when I can look at something like that and be in awe, it's just so amazing. So please, you know, proceed. I just wanted to chime in with the cheering for Alexandra.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the story that Alexandra wanted me to tell is of a young woman who, when she was 15, living in the northwest part of Pakistan, probably one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a woman, started getting young girls into school. And that was what her colleague, Malala Yousafzai, you may remember, got shot in the head for.
Yes.
And subsequently won the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Gululai steadily worked on at this, but now she's trained over 200 young men and young women as interlocutors who go into the madrasas where young men are being trained to be jihadis and go home with them to their families and talk with their families about why the Quran would not sanction suicide bombing. And they have so far been able to dissuade over 203 jihadis from carrying out that mission of suicide bombing.
Wow.
So this to me is the most extraordinary methodology, and it's brought about by pure courage, because this young woman's life is threatened every day for doing this. And I would love to bring her to the United States. She has been once, and for you to meet her, because she's one of my great heroines. And the technique that she uses, of course, is listening. And I find that wherever I go, if we want to know the shortcut to defusing fights and conflict, it is always to listen. Now, lots of people think they're good listeners, and most of us are not. But when you train yourself to really listen to somebody's point of view before you start arguing your own point, they are astonished if you read back to them what you've heard, to show them that you really did listen to them. And then you can ask them to do the same, so that you can give them your point of view and ask them to really listen to you. And in that way, you move from the head, the brain, if you like, which is always saying, I'm right and you're wrong, to the heart, which says, oh my goodness, is that how it feels for you? So this is a powerful and terribly simple technology, and can be taught to anyone. And children love to do it as well. Often they teach their parents when they've learned.
Wow, that's so amazing, because a lot of people are putting in their head what they want to talk about rather than seeing the other person's point of view. And boy, oh boy, do we learn that within our interpersonal relationships with our siblings, our parents, our best friends, ourselves. How many times do I have an argument with myself, right? Got to listen to that gut intuition, listen to each other. And the world leaders, if they could only learn that, that's amazing.
Exactly.
Wow. And I'd love to meet her. She sounds like an amazing shiro.
She is a shiro. You're quite right.
Wonderful. So we only have a little bit of time left. I want to talk about the next steps for your book and how you're going to reach out to people. I know you've had a very successful response to this amazing business plan that you have for peace. I understand you're going to be doing a webinar. Can you explain to our listeners where you're going to do this, how you're going to do it, and what they'll learn?
Yeah, it's a follow-on to the book, and it will begin later in November. It would be a 3-part webinar, and what people will be able to take away from it is not only how to transform conflict at work or in your community, but also how to take a stand for what you believe in. Many of us find that very difficult, and there are simple things we can learn in order to do it really well, to raise our voices. And thirdly, how to build a culture of communication and transparency at work so that people can feel more like a community and less like competing teams. And fourthly, how to make your own particular personalized contribution to a world without war. And I put forward 31 suggestions of what anybody can do right there where you live.
They're wonderful, simple suggestions that actually take a lot of discipline to do. So I'm so glad that we have a book to reference in your webinars that are coming out. I love the fact that you're doing the conflict at work. We're going to be having a march here in Hollywood called Take Back Your Workplace, which is in tandem with the #MeToo campaign, really about standing up and having our voices heard and really figuring out how can we resolve the conflict within ourselves, our family, our communities, at work and in play. I can't wait to dive into that webinar. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to bring on the amazing Evola. And I'm so excited about bringing you two powerhouses together along with Alexandra, because I've been waiting for this since we booked this. And so we're gonna let Lynn talk about the Peace Angel Project, which is so mind-blowing, aligned with what you're doing. And then I want to open up the dialogue to have a juicy conversation between us all. So right after this break, we're going to bring on a dear friend, Lynn Evola. We'll be right back.
The Little Dog That Could is the fantastically true story of a man and a little dog that came into his life as his mentor to help him understand the world beyond his human senses and to experience life, love, and healing beyond his human understanding. Best-selling author Filippo Voltaggio, who currently hosts the highly regarded Life Changes show, is an internationally known singer, speaker, and life coach. Filippo offers up his own story, how one little surprise package in fur and 4 legs transformed his life unexpectedly forever and furthered his path of self-discovery. In The Little Dog That Could, Filippo brings to life the meaning of the adage, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Through the reading of this book, you will experience the journey of real miracles that transcend time, space, and logic while gaining practical tools that will help you navigate your way. The Little Dog That Could is available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. For more information, visit thelittledogthatcould.com. That's thelittledogthatcould.com.
Okay, welcome back. This is GWEN Talks Radio and your host, Tess Cacciatore, co-host Alexandra Feldner. And we are so blessed to have this conversation just with Dr. Scilla Elworthy. And now we're going to bring on our next guest, which is a dear friend, sister of mine. She is a contemporary American artist. She has been exhibited in museums all over the world. She's the founder of the Peace Angels Project and co-founder of Angel of Peace Awards of the Violence Prevention Coalition of Greater Los Angeles, which was formed with Billy Weiss. She's a life member of the National Arts Club of New York City. She is best known for developing a global project to use contemporary weapons of war and transforming them into iconic works of art, making metal sculptures of angels out of melted weapons such as guns or nuclear weapons casings. She has been honored by the United Nations and has collected weapons to build a statue at One Police Plaza in New York City. I had the honor of going to the museum storage place, which we'll talk about, to see this beautiful monument of an angel that's going into the World Trade Center Museum. I'm so excited. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you for the honor of inviting me to speak. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to give a little background of how we met. We met through a mutual friend, and I remember meeting you at the LA County Museum, and I remember sitting across the table going, wow, she's really powerful. And I just couldn't wait to see where this relationship would flourish. And we kind of lost contact for a while, and then all of a sudden it just re-popped up and went deeper and more beautiful than I could ever imagine. And I've been able to film your back end of your story and be with you, not only in New York, but in Los Angeles, and with you and your mother. And I just want to just give you such honoring and love, and also wish you a happy anniversary of 25 years of the Peace Angel Project.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you very much. It was wonderful having you with my mother. It really was. That was something I'll never forget in my entire life. I appreciated it.
That was really powerful, because your mom was a very big instrumental fan of yours, obviously, as mothers can be, but she was a big proponent of the Peace Angel Project. You want to talk about how you started and let our listeners know about your backstory, which I know, but I'd love for them to hear it from you.
Sure. I've been an artist my entire life. It's something that came in with me. So creating art, I learned to do at the same time I learned to walk and talk. So my mother, of course, was with me all of that early time. And she was very instrumental in the fact that she gave me crayons, and she gave me permission and appreciation. And when a lot of the parents were getting, nervous if their kids would use the crayons on the walls, she was very courageous. And it was very unusual being an artist in the old neighborhood in south side of Chicago, walking around drawing when everybody was doing everything else. So it was unusual. And I really appreciated that she and I had that close relationship, so that even though it was so unusual, she and I could talk about it. And that extended when I had an inspirational experience in 1992 and was inspired to create the Peace Angels Project. There were very few people I would talk to about it, because I knew it was so outlandish and so unusual. It didn't fit into education or medicine or science. The arts even didn't really connect to the Peace Angels Project till recently, because it combined a kind of conceptual basis with the drawing, with the sculpture, with weapons, real weapons. And so it was unusual is the best word. And so my mother early on stepped in and funded some of the very first steps that I took, because who would believe me? Absolutely no one would believe me. So she was very instrumental, and I really appreciated that. And when I created the very first 8-foot sculpture, the Renaissance Peace Angel, which is now in the permanent collection of the National September 11th Museum, about to be unveiled next year.
It's so powerful.
It was my mother who gave me the satin, the cloth, to make the gown. So my father's best friend, my father had already passed, and his best friend funded the very first sculptures, and my mother gave me the cloth. So it kind of became something that it was the three of us involved. It meant a lot to me, yeah.
It was such an honor to be able to go with you behind the scenes to the museum archives and see that angel firsthand, because once it gets in the museum in 2018, the whole world is going to be able to see it. So thank you again for honoring me with that extreme blessing of being able to see it and touch it and hear your story and record your story on film. I was so blown away by that.
Thank you, Tess. I mean, honestly, when people try to see things that artists have done, they want to get behind the scenes and see the secrets, but they don't. It's like during the current time period, they don't really think about that. They think, okay, I'll wait and see it when it's in the museum, but then anybody will see it. At the National September 11th Museum, it's considered their winged victory. It's like the crown. So we're all very, very honored that sculpture that was at Crossroads School of Arts and Sciences. It was unveiled in April 1997 in Santa Monica. And then as soon as the World Trade Center was hit, Beacon Mafucci movers brought it across the country. They closed Canal Street for the sculpture to come in. It was extraordinary. And they placed it in front of Nino's, where they fed firemen, police officers, and rescue workers post 9/11. It was a very raw time period, and absolutely no one wanted to talk about peace. So it kind of held that space. It became to me a real peace angel when it stood out in front. And being a conceptual artist, I brought marking pens to sign the cement base because I think that way. So that started the action of firemen, police officers, rescue workers, people coming from all over the world to sign the base. And it became a part of history. So to me, that peace angel really can't be replaced. It was poured in Berkeley in 1994 and 5. It was unveiled at Crossroads School, and the plaque was made of nuclear stainless steel and guns. Because, like, for me, the Peace Angels Project isn't about women or men or children or which race or no divisions. It's about everyone. And so that Peace Angel, I wasn't going to use weapons unless I authentically had them, and it took time to build those relationships. So by the time 1997 came, I had authentic relationships with law enforcement and the nuclear overseas. So we made the plaque out of that metal, and then Crossroads put the cement base at 5 feet, but it was empty. There was nothing written on it. It was just to raise it up off the ground outside, of course. And then when it was brought across the country, we signed the base. So it's evolved over time. And when you saw it, you only saw the sculpture. They're now replacing. It's so poetic. Sheriff McDonnell, you were with me.
Yes.
When they gave us the rebar. Sheriff McDonnell is the third sheriff of LA County, the largest law enforcement agency in the world, that gave us weapons. The rebar that we picked up, Tess, is now being used at the World Trade Center here in New York to place the sculpture and the base back together again. Isn't that something?
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Now the listeners will see the synergy of the business plan for peace, which has simple everyday things that we can do as individuals and citizens of cultures and countries around the world, by Scilla. And then you get to that place where we get to have all these weapons that are now able to be melted down and made into 64 feet monuments of the Peace Angel Project, which I've seen the drawings of. You can see the drawings, on the website. We'll give you all the website information that you can look at this. So I want to shift the conversation into where you're going with the Peace Angel Monument. You're going to have one in New York. I've been with you here in LA looking to see where they're going to place the monument here in Los Angeles, and one in Silicon Valley. I want you to talk about the base of the monument, how those humanitarians are there, and how it builds up to 64 feet, and the melting down of these weapons and guns.
Well, being an artist, every single thing I do, from a drawing to a sculpture or a monument, is based on the divine mean. Most people don't know that, but it's a way of measurement. So the 64-foot monument is because there's 2 rows of human beings on the monument. And taking from the size of a 6-foot human being, it goes out to 64 feet. I won't go through all the details of it, but that's how it works. So the monuments each have a 100 by 100 foot labyrinth, which tells the narrative of that place. Like for Los Angeles, it's the walk of suffering and the walk of achievement that leads us to contemporary Los Angeles. The story in Los Angeles is guns. The reason I wrote the Peace Angels Project starting in Los Angeles was because I found out that 1,000 children had been killed the year before. I'm the only artist allowed at the Arms Trade Treaty and the Biennial Meeting of States on Small Arms and Light Weapons at the UN. And they asked me a couple of years ago why I started the Peace Angels Project, and I told them what I just told you. And they said they wished it was only that bad now. It's so much worse, and it's all over the world. It's a true epidemic of violence. So, case in point, the art is used to shift consciousness. And it takes our awareness and our consciousness to a different place. And of course, with me, that means a place to get along with each other. Whether you call it peace or whatever you want to call it, it's a prosperity and ability to build. So the monuments in Los Angeles, New York, and Silicon Valley will all be made of decommissioned nuclear stainless steel primarily. The labyrinths are made primarily with guns. In Silicon Valley, that will include carbon leached from the atmosphere for global warming. And what we have in New York is a story of the beginning of America, basically, with the World Trade Center and the heroes who came after. The monuments are based with the narrative on the bottom. On the base above the narrative are two rows of human beings, humanitarian philanthropists and humanitarian activists who have done extreme good to make the world a better place, whether they came from economics or medicine, education, the arts, science, not just conflict resolution, but pro-building. So it's both. The activists are like the Archbishop Desmond Tutus of the world and the Dalai Lama, but also the Sierra Club and, God bless, organizations we don't even know the name of, but follow along the same lines as the Nobel Peace Prize, where they have done an action that has taken humanity from one place to a better place. Then at the top, you have an ideal, whether it's a male peace angel in New York or a female in Los Angeles or the globe with the peace sign in Silicon Valley that will revolve at the revolution of the earth. They're based on an ideal, something to lift up humanity, to raise our throat high. That's a concept in art. When you open a person's throat, open it higher, it's a way of uplifting and looking to a better place. Whether you're looking at the David or you're looking at the Golden Gate Bridge, it's a way of lifting up. And so that's what the monuments are about. There are 1 million weapons apiece. That's the goal. And they will stand for thousands and thousands of years. So we want every single component, very complex in concept, to stand for humanity, not only now, but as we go along as a human race. Most assuredly, the things that we're working on now that are so complicated will become even more so. So it's a way of holding ourselves up and uplifting our intentions. So that's what we're doing now.
I
that's
love
what we're
that.
working on.
When you're mentioning the throat, that's the chakra of communication. So it's about having that dialogue of peace, and the fact that you have 1 million weapons that will be in each of those cities and each of those monuments. I want to remind our listeners that we are a global call, and radio show. So Lynn is calling in from New York, and we hear sirens in the background, which to me is a symbol of we're in an emergency situation. We need to get these 1 million weapons off the streets and into this place where you can build these monuments. I'm going to turn it over to Alexandra. Do you have any questions that you want to ask or topics you want to discuss, Lynn?
What I find interesting listening to you, Lynn, and knowing Scylla's stories so well is, what was your experience when you talked to the people, like, in the police people and the people who are dealing with weapons? Because it's quite surprising sometimes what comes out when you directly address yourself to these people. You think they're all about violence, and actually they are not.
No, they're not. They're mostly about protection. Mm. And that's a kind of very interesting concept about humanity overall, as we have a balance between peace and protection. So I respect everyone. I'm dead center. The Peace Angels Project is dead center. Mm. In the human race, we look and we appreciate and we enroll, but that's all. We don't judge. We don't try to change anyone. And I receive such cooperation from government and law enforcement overall that I have great respect for them.
When I was with you in Los Angeles Police Department and the mayor's office, they were all bowing to you, just scrambling to say thank you so much for the work you're doing. So it was wonderful for me to see that the police departments and the governments are behind you on this, because to get 1 million weapons off the streets, especially with the catastrophes that are happening, the gun laws that are not protecting us from semi-automatic and automatic weapons, the catastrophes that happened in Vegas. This kind of thing is the solution. Bringing awareness to using art as a conversation piece to create peace, and then have the book come out for the business plan for peace. It's just practical steps to be able to align. I want to make sure that Scilla and you have a chance to dialogue together too. So talk amongst yourselves for a minute. I'm just so thrilled to bring the two of you together.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the images of your beautiful statues and what you've created. They're very beautiful, and it's a wonderful story as well. And I salute the longevity and how you've kept at it over the years. Well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your work as well, very much. It takes so many of us to come from a different angle to make a difference in the world.
I think that's true. And yes, and I'm thinking about how this whole movement that's emerging now to recognize, I think, for the first time, the incredible contributions of women to peace, at the same time as we're having enormous scandals going on in the UK around about parliamentarians having transgressed in terms of sexual behavior with their employees. And we have
that in Hollywood too. Our whole infrastructure of the entertainment industry is crumbling in all good ways.
It's very interesting, isn't it? And the newspapers here are running headlines saying, "Is this the end of patriarchy?" And I do think it's not.
You should have seen Alexandra's jaw just drop, just like mine. We're both, whoa!
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's not going away. A lot of people thought it would just be a flash in the pan, but no.
With the women's marches and the movement and the feminine rising, and to see the three of you, I'm just in awe and honored to be in your presence, to be able to see that we're a part of this revolution that's going to happen, and not to smash men. I always say we do GWEN with the men.